Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hey, Carla. Hey, Judy. We had a busy day today because apparently there was a Karen Reed hearing today that I didn't know about. So that's at 10. So we'll do Phil until 10, and then we'll do Karen Reed, and then we'll play catch up with the trial, with the battered and burned trial, which is really, really interesting. I'm glad I decided to do it. I just hope that, hey, Jelly Bean, I just hope that that trial gets wrapped up before Karen Reed starts. So, let's go ahead. The only thing is, I didn't write down the timestamp of where we stopped. So, I have my sticky notes right here, so I don't forget to do that today. Maybe we won't have to. Maybe we can stop at a good stop and I won't have to remember. Okay, so we are still on Dr. Pena. I think we're going to forever be on Dr. Pena. I don't know. He's got like 18, 19 videos of his testimony. It's crazy.
Outlook towards life at that particular time.
Yeah, she said, I'm happy, positive, and successful.
Okay. And did you do any other investigation to corroborate that as to where it was just a rosy outlook viewpoint she was saying, or was it actual real?
It was real.
Okay, you thought it was real. And my question is, did you go beyond just her statement when you made that determination?
Well, yes. I mean, I received material later, which, of course, you provided kindly, which actually supports that. And I'm trying to think what else. There was other notes she wrote to her other doctors, like the orthopedic surgeon who helped her here with these broken wrists. You see the date up there, Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. That I won't mention his name. She wrote him a very kind note. She struggled in there. He was, hurting because of the wrist fractures. And then she felt a little down because it was Christmas Eve, then it turned into Christmas Day. They admitted her to the hospital. And, no one wants to be in the hospital at Christmas, so she felt kind of down, depressed, and she felt kind of under the weather. So, but she was kind of not a very good patient. She's just kind of grumpy, but it's normal feeling. And so she wrote an apology letter to this orthopedic surgeon, again, very positive. I thought that was interesting. So anyway, sorry.
Okay, that was a little sidetrack, but I want to follow up on it because you mentioned it, Dr. Pena, is that when you finally got the records that this particular conversation with Ms. Clarkson eventually led you to, you actually got the records of her wrist injuries, and essentially she was dancing and
Did you see that, whatever that expression was on Phil Spector's face?
some type of a party, and she fell and broke her wrist. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you learn about any of the details of that? For example, that she was intoxicated at the time when that happened?
I did not know that.
Okay. And so you don't know how she injured her wrist initially, is that correct?
No, I know she slipped and fell, but that's all I can tell you.
Okay, it was a fall basically. And then were there also some other records where after she injured her wrist did you know it was even at a party, or did you get any details at all?
She was dancing. I don't know what kind of party it was, but well, she was dancing.
Okay, well, whatever it is, she fell when she was dancing at a party and she broke both her wrists.
Right.
Okay, and she had to have operations, pins put in them, pretty serious breaks, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so that led to her going to the hospital on Christmas because she was depressed and wanted some help or whatever, correct?
Well, being in the hospital made her feeling sad and depressed.
Okay, because it was during the holidays.
Yes.
Okay, and that was years before this, before she went to see Dr. Bantra here and was getting her medications in 2002, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so did you also find, and did it also, eventually your little investigation, did it lead you to the fact that after she fell and broke her wrists at this party while dancing, she was recovering from that after some operations, that she was in a rear end automobile collision, which kind of re-injured those two wrists that she had broken at the party.
She sprained them, but they found that she did not fracture the wrists again, but she did put a strain on them, and her range of motion and rotation of her wrists, as I'm demonstrating to the jurors, was a little bit limited again, but she was in rehab anyway, strengthening with a physical therapist, actually, was helping her out. So she had to continue that, essentially.
Okay, and basically she was involved in she was driving a car and she rear-ended another car, and I don't want to say she seriously re-injured her wrist, but it caused her some medical problems because of that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and she went to the doctors again. She got some new prescriptions for painkillers because she was having pain in her wrists and she had pins in them, and this was a big thing in her life. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and this medical problem that she had regarding her wrists and the re-injury, she wasn't able to work and make money at all. Is that correct?
I don't know about that.
Okay. Now, anyway, back to the note, doctor. This particular note regarding the wrists and the fractures, it was around Christmas of 2001, which would have been right before the 2002 New Year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then there's a comma there, and then basically it was reported to you that she was depressed over the holidays, and that's in reference to the recent holidays, given the time of her death in the 3rd of February of 2003, correct?
That's incorrect.
And you're saying that that's related to the other holidays, is that true?
That's related, I just described for the jurors, that's related when she broke her wrist in 2001. I think it was Christmas Eve, going into Christmas Day. She's at a party, she slipped and fell, and she was depressed over that holiday.
Okay, and when you look at the next line, it says she just took a job at the House of Blues as a waitress, is that correct?
Yes.
And she had normal feelings of SAD, sadness, is that correct?
Sadness, that's
okay,
correct.
So nothing out of the ordinary there, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and you relied upon that statement, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and then there's a something HX, so I'm going to try to interpret that and correct me if I'm wrong. No, and then there's a kind of a funny looking symbol there, and that's the symbol for psychiatric, the medical symbol for psychiatric. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then HX, is that correct? History, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then we talk about some asthma. We'll be getting medical records next week, blah, 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 and that basically.
Did he say it said SAD? Because SAD doesn't mean sad. It means seasonal affective disorder, which means you're depressed when it's winter and there's not as much sunshine.
The note, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, now, in your investigation regarding the manner of death, did you have your investigators within the medical examiner's office do any further interviews of other people that knew Miss Clarkson or had contact with her in, let's say, the year preceding her death?
No.
Okay. Now, with reference to Miss Clarkson, I want to refer you to a note in a meeting that you had with members of the Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office, and you mentioned something about Mr. Dowell being he's not a medical doctor, but he was there too. Is that correct?
Yes.
This was on the 31st of March of 2004. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have to see her, if you don't mind.
You know, I get one copy here, but I'll find another. Can I?
Yes.
I'll show it to you. Do you have your own notes here with you?
Yeah, I could thumb through them.
Maybe take a look at it and see if you can.
Okay, let's see if I can find it here. Thank you.
Carla, I get it in the summer too. You're the only other person I have ever heard say they get it in the summer. I thought I was just crazy.
That's what's the date on that again?
March 31st.
Okay.
Let me see if I got it. The next one, Dr.
Oh, you do? Oh, thanks a lot.
All my red lines on it.
That's okay.
Very good.
Thanks a lot.
Now, Dr. Payne, let me ask you some foundational questions regarding this note. This is a note on your Form 42, and it deals with your record of this particular event, and it has the case number for Lana Clarkson 0300937. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it's part of your official record at the coroner's office relating to this case. Is that true?
Yes.
And this was a meeting, like many of the meetings you had, you documented and correctly put down the information that was presented to you at that meeting concerning the decedent, Lana Clarkson. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and would this be, like the other records we talked about, a proper business record that you had a duty to make accurately pursuant to your responsibilities with the coroner's office?
Yes.
And does it indicate that you had a meeting at 10:15 a.m. and on the 31st of March of 2004, and that meeting ended at 12:15 p.m. to a full-page note regarding a summary of what was discussed at that particular meeting? Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And was the meeting with members of the district attorney's office that included Deputy DA Sortino, McCormick, were those two at the meeting?
Yes.
And Dr. Fortman,
Yes.
who was an odontologist, Dr. Anselmo, who is also an odontologist,
Yes.
Mr. Dowell, who is a criminalist, that he is from the SEM lab.
Again, he's a tool analysis specialist.
Okay, what is the SEM lab?
That stands for scanning electron microscopy.
And then Dr. John Andrews, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, during the course of this meeting, it sounded like it was a 2-hour meeting. It was only about the decedent Lana Clarkson, is that correct?
Yes.
And you were the person that did the autopsy and you had already issued your report as to cause and manner of death. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And when you met with these individuals, were you the only one that talked, or did other people talk and converse? In other words, give us an idea of what the give and take was about the general nature of this meeting.
If I remember correctly, Mr. Sortino, Mr. McCormick talked first with a dentist, the two dentists just mentioned, and then with Dr. Andrews, who's a neuropathologist. He actually cut Miss Clarkson's brain and did a thorough study on that. And then at the end, he talked with Mr. Steve Dowell.
Okay, and during the course of this meeting, this 2-hour meeting, you gave information to them too, is that correct?
A little bit, yes.
Okay, the information that you gave them a detailed explanation of what a psychological autopsy was. Is that correct? You defined it to them and you expressed what it consisted of. Is that true?
Hold on a second. I don't recall myself doing that. It's at the end here.
Okay.
I'll just read this briefly. Briefly went over toxicology. Mr. Steve S. Dowell suggests psychological autopsy, but DA Sortino said put on hold for now. That's it.
Did you, during the course of this meeting, explain to him what was involved in a psychological autopsy?
No.
Okay. Dr. Pena, if I show you a letter that was written in response to this meeting by Mr. Sortino, might that refresh your recollection as to what you said?
That'd be great.
Okay, if I could approach, Your Honor. I'm going to ask you to, excuse me. You could look at a letter dated May 3rd, 2004, and just look at the first paragraph. Just read that to yourself and let me know when you're done with that.
Okay, I just read the first paragraph.
Okay, you can read the whole thing if you want.
Well, I never saw that letter before. That's confidential, but that's, the first paragraph's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a letter, well, let me ask you this. Does that in any way help you refresh your recollection, this confidential letter that you referred to, that at the meeting on March 31st, 2004, that you explained to Mr. Sortino and the other deputy DAs that were there what a psychological autopsy was?
Yes,
Okay, and did you do that?
I must have, yes.
Okay, well, it sounds like you don't remember it now.
Well, I don't, but
Okay.
but that, I mean, it doesn't even refresh my memory, but it
Okay,
makes a statement. That's,
you know, if
that's
it doesn't
fine.
refresh your memory, just tell us that. You don't have to just agree with what somebody else says happened if you really have a different memory than that, Mr. Dr. Pena, okay? So you really don't remember, do you?
No,
And basically, your testimony, as I understand it, is you did not do that. You just said that right before I showed you the letter.
Counsel just misstated his testimony and said he doesn't remember.
Okay. Okay, is it that you don't remember that you might have done it or that you did not do that? What?
A or B. I think it's A.
A, B. Well, all right. In any event, let's take this, very carefully.
Let's take it after a break.
Okay, let's do that.
Keep in mind the admonishment, we'll be in recess for 15 minutes.
Or note marked MMM next in order.
All right, so Mark.
Thank you. If we could put that on the screen. Dr. Pena has now marked his exhibit. Chance to look. Does it have to reflect note for that meeting? It marked for so. Basically, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, just so that we can put everything in context, you didn't just talk about the psychological autopsy at this meeting. That was just one of the many topics that was discussed. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay. And so one of the things that was discussed was the teeth, and we've talked about those at length. And basically, these are the teeth that were knocked out of Miss Clarkson's mouth at the time of her death. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so was that still an issue at that time where there was a question about that, or was it just informational? How did that come about?
It was just for information and recapping what we had already discussed.
Okay. And then there was some other discussions you talked about, and you related the opinions of Dr. Andrews, I believe, regarding how long it was before Ms. Clarkson died, basically, whether it was immediate or otherwise. And there was some discussion about swelling that could occur and how long the heart would go and something like that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And Dr. Andrews sort of addressed those concerns. Is that true?
Yes.
And did he say in those meetings that basically she would lose conscious immediately, but she may...
Why are you just reading the whole statement unless there's something you're impeaching him with? Is there some new information? What?
Yeah, there's I believe after the consciousness issue, there is an inconsistent statement regarding the issue of, if I'm correctly reading, HB may have something perhaps for a few minutes. In other words, I believe her heart would have gone for a few minutes, which I believe is somewhat inconsistent with.
So ask him that.
Okay.
Get right to it.
Dr. Pena, there's a statement in there and it has some medical terminology in it. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And HB stands for something. Is that correct?
Well, that's actually HR. Sorry for my writing. That's heart rate.
Okay. What is the statement regarding the heart rate and the few minutes?
According to Dr. Andrews, that's where this came in. Dr. Andrews had suggested that the heart...
Object, once again, if it's attributable to a different person, but it's hearsay.
Well, but then he can be if someone else has a different opinion, he can be cross-examined on it as to his opinion. I'm going to allow it for that purpose to test his opinion. Go ahead.
Dr. Andrews had commented on about the heart rate continuing perhaps even up to a few minutes, which is actually incorrect. Because Dr. Idabashi, with an I, who I spoke to prior to testimony, maybe about a few weeks ago, we went over this thoroughly.
Eviction non-responsive at this point.
Well,
at this point? I'll
You know
ask
what,
you.
if we're going to get to it, let's go ahead and get to it. That's the bottom line, you're correct, but go ahead and explain yourself.
Go ahead and,
Dr. Debashi is the older neuropathologist who's probably close to 80 now. Foremost neuropathologist probably in the world. Fortunate to have him on our staff. And I just went over this with him. He said, no. It'd be maybe a few seconds, whatever I said Tuesday. That's the correct answer. And I'll leave it at that.
whatever he said Tuesday, what was that?
Whatever
I said
Pena
Tuesday.
tested.
Oh, I see. Tuesday was a long time ago.
So it appears Dr. Andrews had a different opinion, but this doctor, when you spell the name for the
Sure. Itabashi is I-T, hold on a second. I-T-A-B, as in boy, A-S-H-I.
Okay, so there was a difference of opinion, the two of them, and you have gone with Dr. Itabashi.
That's correct.
Now, yesterday, I thought when we talked about what your basis for the time was, you said you relied completely on Dr. Andrews' opinion. Did I understand your testimony yesterday?
No, that's incorrect.
Okay.
The general neuropathology itself is beautiful. That's correct. It's interpretation of spinal cord shock, which is what Mrs. Clarkson suffered that causes her to go completely lose consciousness. Everything we've already discussed, subject to interpretation. And that's what Dr. Debashi disagrees with.
Okay, and you just talked to him a few weeks ago, and that's what you based your testimony on. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so to the extent that you have any opinion and have given any information to the jury, you're just conveying that to the jury from other doctors that have more experience in that particular area. Is that correct?
Correct.
And one of those would be Dr. Andrews, who was actually involved in this case. Is that correct?
That's
He
correct.
actually attended the autopsy. Is that correct?
Yes.
He actually wrote a consultation report regarding the autopsy. Is that true?
Correct.
And it part of the medical file and the medical record in this case has
I need a break. I just need a break. I need some silence for a minute. She was shot. Why do we need all the medical history? You don't like pumpkin spice coffee, but you like everything else pumpkin? Okay. I'm serious though. Like, I know what he's trying to prove. But it's like he's beating a dead horse at this point. Oh, wow. I didn't even hear about that.
all of his documentation. Is that true?
Yes.
And he was the one that was invited to this meeting to give information to the parties that were concerned. Is that true?
Yes.
And you documented what he said. Is that true?
At that time, yes.
At that time. And did you, when you got the contrary information, did you write a note in the file that there was a discrepancy between the two and that you were going with one versus the other?
No.
Okay. When you, okay. Now, when you, getting to the point where you talk about the psychological autopsy, basically it was a deputy DA that said to put that on hold for now. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I want to show you a document that I'll first ask to be marked next in order, but not displayed until we ask some further questions about it, Doctor. And that's Exhibit NNN. If I could do that, and it purports to be a letter dated March 21st, 2005.
Okay,
May I approach Your Honor?
you may.
Oh, thank you. base stamp of 3978, 3979. You could take a look at that, doctor, and just read it to yourselves. I'm going to ask you some questions about it.
You know, Your Honor, I'm just going to stop after the first paragraph. In fairness to my boss, Dr. Lakshmanan, I was instructed,
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. I think this
Right.
needs to be outside the
If you're
president.
trying to claim a privilege, if you want me to take a look at the document, I'll be happy to do it.
Yeah, I believe I showed those documents to the court.
You did. I just want to read it again with that in mind.
Okay.
Well, if you're claiming a privilege, it's not privileged. Okay, you can go ahead and
Thank you.
answer to it. Thank you.
Dr. Pena, you've got a document before you, exhibit NNN, and it's a 2-page document. Is that correct?
yes,
And on the second page, it has at the very bottom, it has CC to it. You know what that CC means?
means to copy it to myself.
Okay, well, it says CC, copy to so-and-so, and it's got your name, Dr. Lois Pena. Is that correct?
Louis Pena, yes.
Lewis, okay. And it's dated, the document is dated, it's a letter dated March 21st, 2005. Is that true?
Yes,
And within the contents of that document, basically it describes about 30 separate items of information by way of reports and attached emails, things of that nature. Do you see that?
yes.
Okay. And it also talks about a computer hard drive. Is that true? Looking at the second page.
Second page, I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay. Now, this is a document that you received on or about March 21st, 2005. Is that correct?
I never received this.
Okay, so it was sent, it's addressed to Dr. Lakshmanan, and it was CC'd to you, but you're saying you never received this document. Is
No.
that correct? Now, yesterday you told me, I asked you about the documents that were referenced in this letter of March 21st of 2005, and you said that you knew where those documents were physically located. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, those documents were physically located in Dr. Lakshmanan's office. Is that correct?
Yes,
And you knew about these documents. Is that true?
yes,
And is it correct that you knew about them because somebody told you about them?
yes.
Okay, and who told you about these documents if you didn't know from getting this letter copied to you?
My boss called me up in 2005, Dr. Lakshmanan.
So he would be the one.
Yes.
Okay, we can get into what he said and so forth, but let me ask you this question, Dr. Pena. With respect to your work in this particular case, did Dr. Lakshmanan review the autopsy report with you before you finalized it?
Yes.
And how do you know that?
He's listed on here, he reviewed it and concurs with the findings, or however I worded the sentence, but he looked at all reports.
Okay, and so basically he worked with you on this case, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and he was at many of the meetings that we've talked about. He's put by name, he's present, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and why was he present in all of these meetings?
Well, he's a chief medical examiner. It's a higher level profile case, and he just wants to listen to the input, and he has input himself. So that's why he's there.
And he's your boss.
Yes.
Okay, and he can, if he chooses to be there, he has a right to be there, obviously, if he's the boss.
Yes.
Okay, and during the course of this case,
It's muscle memory. You just keep going. And then you nod and you wake yourself up. And then you're like, oh crap. I've done it before too.
understood your direct examination the other day when you first testified that he's the one that initially contacted you to be on this case, correct?
Yes.
And he's still involved in this case, is that correct?
Yes.
You talk to him and get advice to him even as this trial has gone on, is that true?
No, actually not.
Okay.
Just wants to know when I'm coming back. Sorry.
It's okay. Dr. Pena, when you had meetings with the district attorney's office, their representatives, he was present a number of times. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And he would participate as far as offering information, things of that nature. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, you were aware, because Dr. Lakshman told you this, that the district attorney's office had conducted an investigation that related to the background of Lana Clarkson. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And they sent a wealth of material.
Hold a second. I'm sorry. Repeat that last question again. I answered that wrong. What you
Okay.
just said. Sorry about that.
The district attorney's office conducted an investigation regarding the background of Lana Clarkson.
You're asking me if I was aware of that?
Okay.
That's what I want to
Yeah.
know.
Were you aware of that from Dr. Lakshman?
No.
This particular letter, is it in the coroner's file?
No.
Did you ever have a discussion regarding this letter with Dr. Lakshman?
No.
Did this material that's referred to in this letter, you indicated that it's in a box in Dr. Lakshman's office. Is that correct?
I don't know if it's in a box, but it's in his office locked.
Okay.
Somewhere.
And it's a lot of material based upon your understanding. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's information essentially regarding emails, computer records relating to Lana Clarkson over a period of time in the months preceding her death. Is that correct?
Objection, calls for speculation.
If you know.
Or it calls for hearsay.
Have you actually seen it?
No.
The objection is sustained.
Let me ask you this, kind of generically. If you were interested in finding out somebody's state of mind, would one thing that you might look at be their emails or correspondence by email that they made within the months preceding their death?
That's an interesting question. It's actually a tough one. I wouldn't rely too much on those as I would personal contact type information would be better through people who knew this person the best, her friends, which would be her friends. That would be the best informational source, in my opinion.
Okay. And you would have to talk to that friend and get information from them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, so if somebody wrote an email to a friend and you wouldn't be able to get any valuable information at all from that?
No, because emails are quite short. Most people are just like, they call it chatting, and they're short sentences. It's hard to extract from that any personal mental state or what someone may be implying from a sentence.
How about if unless you're saying that emails are quite short, what if they're not so short? In other words, that they're more descriptive, they tell about somebody's feelings or emotions or troubles or something along those lines?
That's okay.
Okay, how about a letter, just a handwritten letter or typed letter?
That's good.
It's a little better?
Yeah.
Okay, how about information on some computer regarding, a circumstance involved in their life or anything such as that?
That's good.
That's good stuff?
Mhm.
Okay. And of course, interviews with people that knew the person?
Those are better.
Those are better. Now, why are those better than, let's say, an email where it's the person whose mental state you're trying to understand is at issue? In other words, it's not coming through the filter of another person and interpretation.
The best thing, you got personal contact, eye to eyes, and with the jurors here, and you can see the gestures, you can see the emotion, you can see the eyes, the expression. That's what I'm referring to.
Okay.
More personal.
Okay, so somebody that sees some conduct, they can not only take statements, but then they can also describe conduct of the individual too. Is that what you're saying?
Being interviewed, that's correct.
Okay, being interviewed and so forth. So interviews with people, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now I want to mark another letter, NNN,
No, triple O.
triple L, triple, oh, excuse me. I'm going to ask you some of the same questions, Doctor, and I'm not going to publish it at this point. This is the one I asked you to refresh your recollection on and ask you to recognize that particular document.
Oh, yes, okay, thanks. Okay, whenever.
All right.
Okay. Now, Doctor, have you, prior to today, me showing you that, had you ever seen that exhibit?
No.
Were you aware of the contents of that exhibit?
No,
Okay. In that exhibit, it refers to your meeting of March 31st of 2004. Is that correct?
yes,
Okay. And as far as the letter, does it refer to Mr. Dowell correctly as being the person who brought up the notion of a psychological autopsy at the meeting on the 31st of March 2004?
yes,
Okay, so do you have any reason to believe that this letter is inaccurate in that regard?
no, I'm sorry.
I'll withdraw my objection. I'm
All
sorry.
right.
Okay. Now, the purported author of this letter is Mr. Sortino. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and have you ever seen Mr. Sortino's signature before in any documents or letterhead or anything such as that?
You know, I haven't, to be honest with you,
Okay.
but I can remember.
The contents of this particular letter, other than what we've already talked about, were you, and don't get into what the contents are, but were you familiar with, well, let me rephrase that and ask you this question. You were aware that the district attorney's office was investigating the state of mind of Lana Clarkson in the months prior to her death. In other words, her state of mind as of the time of in the months prior to her death. Is that correct?
Objection. Ms. Stacy, testimony.
Okay, it does, I believe, sustain. Were you aware of that?
No,
All right.
Were you concerned with Miss Clarkson's emotional state during the last months of her life?
you know, I never was.
Let me ask you this hypothetical question. And I'm going to assume a statement made by Lana Clarkson, and then I'm going to ask you whether or not you find it would be pertinent to her emotional state during the last months of her life. Quote, "I am truly at the end of this whole deal. I'm going to tidy my affairs and chuck it because it's really all too much for just one girl to bear anymore. Don't worry, not before I pay you back." If you assume that that was a statement made by Lana Clarkson in the months before she died, would you want to consider that in making any of the determinations that you made that are contained in your autopsy report?
Before you answer your objection.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. My objection is it's an incomplete hypothetical. I believe it's any quote, that sort of quote is taken out of context.
If you can show me the other parts you might want to include, I'll be happy to take a look at it. You just approach it. You don't I just need to look at the exhibit. Gentlemen, you don't have to approach. I just want to get a copy of it and look at it. Thank you. Are you suggesting that the entire email be read?
I am not.
Okay. All right, I think you need to read the entire message to put it in context, and then you can ask him what you want about it.
That's fine, Your Honor. I'm going to ask that Mr. Rosen actually do that so
Okay.
that he's got the actual document.
Sure.
Okay.
David, on December 8th of '02 at 9:23 p.m., livingdollprod@AOL.com wrote, "Hi, Davey. Thanks for the lovely evening last night. I very much enjoyed your company and, of course, the yummy food, which I wholeheartedly enjoyed yet again this evening. Thank God for it. I feel really bad even taking you up on your offer of a $200 loan. I thought with all the hours you've been working and the fact that you have credit cards, that you were in a much more solid position. I certainly wouldn't want to affect your family holiday adversely in any way. If you can do that, that'd be great. I would never have asked had you not offered. I have nowhere else to turn right now, as I mentioned last night. I will most probably have to move from the cottage, but this small loan will at least help in some way or another. It is very kind of you, and I am sincerely appreciative of that. Call me and let me know how we can connect. Whatever is most convenient for, please. Whatever is most convenient for, for you, obviously. I am sorry not to telephone tonight, but this way you cannot hear my tears. I am truly at the end of this whole deal. I'm going to tidy my affairs and chuck it, because it's really all too much for just girl. Your Honor, we're not finished.
I'm sorry.
I gotta get to the next page. Just a minute. I'm just going to repeat here because the sentence continues on. I'm going to tidy my affairs and chuck it because it's all too much for just one girl to bear anymore. Don't worry, not before I pay you back. Sweet dreams, dear friend, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. XO, Lana.
Okay, you may proceed. Do you have a follow-up question?
Did you hear that entire email, Dr. Pena?
Yes, I did.
Let me ask you this question. Have you read that email?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so you've already considered it, isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay, and how did you get that email?
From your, I don't know how you see the word in law terms, but it was handed over, not handed over, I shouldn't say it that way. It was given to the DA, who then gave it to me.
Okay, and what was your understanding as to where that email came from as far as its source?
Well, it's from her computer.
Do you know whether it was from her computer or the person she sent it to's computer?
That I don't know.
Okay. Do you know who it was sent to? Where is that email now that you reviewed?
I'm sorry, where's it at?
Yeah, you reviewed that email that was just read to you, is that correct?
Yeah, it's right here in my hand.
Okay. Is it part of your file?
It's not part of the file. It was material handed over from your side, the defense, for me to review.
Okay, now we didn't give it to you directly, did we?
No,
Who gave it to you?
district attorney.
Okay, and in addition to the email, was that the only email that was given to you?
This is the only email I can recall that I have in my hand, or in my packet that I have.
Okay, do you have a box of materials in your office that relates to materials that the defense gathered, gave to the district attorney where you got a copy?
Yes.
Okay, and that box, if you could just describe generally what's in that box.
Well, in the box, the big box, like 2 feet high, is all medical records for Ms. Clarkson. I received some what's called defense discovery, which had more medical records of Ms. Clarkson and some investigation material, which of course, I didn't read that. That's not my expertise. Then I received some other expert opinion material, defense expert materials, and then some investigation from the LA Sheriff's Department on interviews that they conducted on an individual, and another investigation done on another woman that was written, that was given to me, and a third one from another gentleman. I can't recall his name offhand. So there's 3, and then the LA Sheriff's Department statements about interviews with people regarding the mental status of Ms. Clarkson.
Okay.
And then this email. This is the only email I have.
Okay, so you've got the email, and can I see that, just so I make sure?
Sure.
Show. Take a peek at, okay. Okay, now this particular email is to a person named David Shapiro.
I only know him here as David on this, but that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, and he's one of the people that's mentioned in Exhibit NNN as the materials described in that document. Is that correct?
To refresh my memory on NNN,
Which is one of the letters that you didn't get? Excuse me, let me approach.
okay, I have it here. You can point it out.
NNN, is he listed? Well, let me just ask, is he
Just-
listed there?
I don't know. There's so many names here. You can point to a line and I can look at it.
Okay, let me look and see.
Oh, I see it now. 24.
Okay, that's it.
Is that it? Okay.
24, interview of David Shapiro, tape of same and relevant emails. Okay?
Okay.
All right, and now let me ask you, as to Mr. Shapiro, the investigative statements and documents of him, are they part of the records that you received?
No, only this email from Ms. Clarkson. That's all I received.
As far as David Shapiro, but you mentioned that there were some investigative reports from the Sheriff's Department. And my question to you is, did you get an investigative report from Mr. Shapiro that basically was an interview of him where he said he knew Ms. Clarkson and he gave them some emails relating to his contact with Ms. Clarkson?
No.
Okay. Did you get any reports regarding Mr. Shapiro, investigative reports, statements, tape-recorded interviews, anything such as that?
No.
Okay. So when you were given this email was it by the district attorney's office recently?
Yes.
Okay. And this is an email that's basically from before Ms. Clarkson's demise. Is that correct?
Yes.
And do you know the history of it, how it got to you? In other words, who gave it to, who it was to, when it was written, anything like that, a date?
No.
Okay. But you reviewed this particular document, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, did you consider that in giving any of the opinions that you have given here in court? In other words, either good, bad, or indifferent, did that confirm your view of things, or did it cause you any concern as far as any opinions that you gave?
It did not.
Okay, so it basically made no difference, is that
That's
correct? Okay. Now, let's go over some of the other records that you were given, and I need you to gather those because I want to be able to ask you some questions potentially about them, so I need to know what they are as far as their date and who they are.
Okay, I have what I have here.
Okay. Let me venture just pick somebody out, an interview with an Irene Elizabeth Laughlin, Laughlin. How about that one?
Objection, Your Honor. The same objection on the 352 that we made assignment.
At this point, that is sustained pending recalling this witness at a later time.
Very good, thank you. All right.
Okay, I'm going to get that out.
Could I approach and just look at the documents, maybe Mr. Jackson, I'd save a
Perhaps you can
minute.
do that at the end of, when we're done.
Okay, we'll do that here.
I can move forward.
I think what we're going to do, Dr. Pena, is I'm going to move on to a different subject, and we'll look at these records and not take the jury's time at this point. And I want to ask you sort of another hypothetical question, though,
Okay.
regarding information. I want you to assume for purposes of this question that this was found on Lana Clarkson's personal computer that she kept at her home, a little studio in Venice at her own home on her own computer. It was a bookmark that basically, and the document reads like this, quote, SAG Foundation in conjunction with Cedars-Sinai's Medical Center will be providing a depression screening and an alcohol dependency screening to all interested SAC members. Must RSVP by Friday, 6/9/02. I want you to assume for purposes of this question that that was a bookmark that was placed on the computer by Ms. Clarkson. Would that type of information be something that you would want to consider in making a determination as to her state of mind at or near the time of her death?
I would have looked into that. That's correct.
Okay, now, I want you to assume that your office was provided the hard drive to her computer, which had that information on there. What would be the reason why you did not look at that hard drive and look at her computer for that type of information?
It was not provided to me.
Okay, when you say it wasn't provided to you, if it was provided to Dr. Lakshman, to his office, that's provided to you. Is that correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Okay. You were not aware of that, is that correct?
That I was not aware of.
Were you aware from any source that Ms. Clarkson had a computer?
Only from this email which came in just a few months ago, that I was aware, obviously, she had a computer. That was it.
Okay, now, yesterday we talked a little bit about some meetings that you had regarding, you said that there were some meetings regarding the defense experts. You had these quote-unquote roundtables with Mr. Jackson, other members of the district attorney's office, correct?
I'm sorry, defense experts, you said?
You were sent some reports of some defense experts.
Okay.
And then you had some roundtable meetings and other meetings, and you had a few meetings, and you described the number and generally what they were about, correct?
Correct.
This is with you and basically attorneys who work for the district attorney's office.
That's correct.
You use the term roundtable meetings,
Yes.
okay? And generally were those roundtable meetings about the materials that were sent to you by the district attorney's office that included the experts from the defense as well as other material?
Yes.
Okay, and some of the material was this material that we're talking about, like this email, for example, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, how many deputy DAs were at this roundtable meeting that you described?
3.
Okay, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Dixon,
It was Mr. Jackson, Mr. Rick Ocampo, and Miss Lisa Kasabian.
okay, so they were there and you discussed extensively all the materials that was provided to you that really came from the defense, these emails, the computer information, things like that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now you were also given as part of this information, Sheriff's Department investigative reports, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, now that didn't come from the defense, did it?
No.
And the first time you saw that was when, those reports?
Just about a couple months ago.
Okay, and those reports were of interviews that were done all the way back to the time immediately after Lana Clarkson died and thereafter, is that correct?
Yes.
And some of them were Sheriff's Department reports and some of them were district attorney investigator reports, is that true?
Yes.
Okay, and the first time that you laid eyes on those reports was a couple of months ago as you were getting ready for trial, getting ready to have these meetings, these roundtables, is that true?
Yes.
Did you ask anybody in these roundtable meetings what the reason, why these hadn't been provided to you before?
No.
Did anybody talk to you about any emails other than the one that was given to you by this person named David?
No.
Did you ask whether or not there were any other emails regarding Lana Clarkson that were similar to the ones that you were given?
No.
Did you talk in these roundtable meetings, and this was one roundtable meeting, but you had other meetings also, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when I ask about, did you talk in these meetings, I want to talk about all of them, any of these meetings. Did you talk about anything that was on Lana Clarkson's computer, such as the statement that I just read to you, something similar to that?
Yes.
Okay. But this one regarding the depression clinic, you weren't aware of that. Nobody ever said anything about that. Is that correct?
No.
Okay. What else did you talk about, just in general, about what was on her computer? And if you could just describe the general nature of it, not the necessarily the content of it.
The only email I have, I'm sorry, off a computer.
Whether it's an email or not, there's a lot of things on a computer that are not email.
Email, as far as I know, that's all I have.
Okay, that's one question. Another question is, did you talk about whether you saw anything in writing or not? Did you talk about anything else on her computer? Like, let's say, things that she typed, things that she saved, anything such as that? Setting aside, for the moment, emails.
No.
In any of these meetings, the roundtable meeting and whatever meetings you had with the district attorney, did you ever talk about any type of calendar or diary that Ms. Clarkson kept?
No.
Okay. Now, you would agree, and I want to make sure that you understand what we're talking about. We're not talking about anything that you're typing up or writing on a computer, like a memoir or anything like that. We're talking about just simply a daily calendar of events. Okay. Like I keep a calendar, like tomorrow I've got to do this, I got to do that. Do you understand what we're talking about?
Yes.
Now you would agree that when you want to understand somebody's state of mind, their intentions, and what they may or may not want to do, that this would be something that you would want to look at. Is that true, Dr. Pena?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. Would it be true, doctor, that somebody that is reckless, that maybe engages in risky behavior, might put that down in a calendar, like, I wish I didn't do this, or something along those lines?
Objection, that calls for speculation, Mr. Graves.
Unless you've seen, have you ever seen anything like that?
No, I never have.
All right, the objection sustained.
Dr. Pena, have you ever, in the course of a death investigation, looked at the personal papers or effects of a decedent?
Some suicide notes I have, but that's handwritten.
Okay. So other than suicide notes, you don't ever look at other personal documentation trying to understand and consider the state of mind of an individual. Is that true?
No, larger coroner will do that for us if necessary.
Okay, then do they give you a report regarding that?
They'll turn over documents depending on the case and help us out in that direction if we're having problems with the manner of death.
Okay, so I want to kind of separate between what you might do personally, like you don't personally go to somebody's house and ask for somebody's documents, but you might send an investigator to do that very thing.
Yes.
Then you'll get a report regarding that along with some of the pertinent documents. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you've considered those personal papers and effect documents, but through the investigative process of the coroner's office. Is that true?
Yes.
Now, in this case, this high-profile case, your office didn't do any investigation regarding the state of mind of Lana Clarkson. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And basically what happened is the district attorney's office did it for your office. Isn't that true?
That I was unaware of.
Okay. So it seems like you mentioned that this case was unusual in some respects, that you did some things that you didn't ordinarily do, like go to the scene. Why was it that your office didn't look or investigate the issues in this case regarding Ms. Clarkson's state of mind? In other words, first of all, that didn't happen. Who made the decision for that not to happen? Was it you or was it Dr. Lachlan?
Well, it wasn't me, and I'm not sure if it was my boss, to be honest with you, because I've never talked to him about this. I can tell you probably what happened, where the confusion may be, if this may help. See, we investigate the case. So as you heard me describe on Tuesday, the totality of the circumstances. I got into some physical evidence. I thought that was important. The statement, backing up a little bit as circumstances. Then I got into the physical evidence. And I told you about the mental health from the medical records that I had at that time. No problem. Well, it turns out all that stands is very accurate. But in September of 2003, when I closed the case, there's reasons why we make it a homicide and nothing else but a homicide. I made that very clear to you on Tuesday, what I used, what I factored in. Now, if I was having trouble at that time, or we were just boxed in a corner and I had no information on a statement, I had no information on an investigation, what happened. This woman's found alone, let's say, at this residence. Be a little odd still, but in the gun's there. We'd be quite worried that this is a suicide. We would have pursued the other end of the table, looking at it that way. But we're confident of the statement, the physical evidence that I described for you already, and her mental health that I looked at. From a clinical standpoint, there's no indication of this woman having a suicidal attempts in the past, that was one of my big things I was concerned about. So based on that, and we made it a homicide, there was no need to backtrack and start calling people up, friends, et cetera, and not rocking the boat, that's not the right term, but going fishing, because it's not going to change anything at this point. But to give defense counsel credit, I think that we have to consider and keep an open mind always. Our office is neutral. In other words, that's why I put that statement in on a complicated case as such, based on the history and circumstances as currently known, the manner of death is homicide. So if something later, like defense is showing me now, should come in later, months later, years later, and this has happened. Someone finds a note hidden in her bra somewhere in their house. Okay, oh my goodness. So they pull it out and read it. Here, doc, look at this. Oh boy, I blew it. But the woman was alone. That was her gun. So again, it goes back to circumstances. Then I'd reconsider, and we have changed modes before from accidents to suicides or vice versa.
Dr. Pena, you brought up another point. You just mentioned a gun as being a circumstance. That's one of the circumstances that, you gave some information when you gave your rendition of an explanation of why you came to certain opinions. You mentioned a gun. Is that correct? And Ms. Clarkson's contact with weapons, you remember that as being a reason?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know whether there's been any investigation done that you're unaware of? But do you know from these meetings whether or not there was any investigation done as to whether or not Lana Clarkson had any knowledge of weapons at all, whether she liked weapons or didn't like weapons, guns I'm talking about?
Right. There was.
Okay. Yeah. Now, so you had these meetings with the district attorney's office and they brought these facts up to you, isn't that true, Dr. Pena?
With a LA Sheriff detective present, that was the one who provided me with the gun information.
And when was that done, Dr. Pena?
A couple months ago.
Okay. You didn't mention that in your direct exam, that she had this knowledge and affinity for guns. Isn't that true?
Objection, that misstates the testimony that she had knowledge and an affinity for guns.
Sustained to the way the question was phrased.
Dr. Pena, when you talked about her and weapons, basically you considered whether or not she owned a gun, knew about guns, knew where this gun was. Is that correct?
At which time?
At the time of her death. In other words, you said, did she own guns or say that she had any familiarity with weapons? Was that a consideration?
No, I didn't say it quite that way. Hold on a second. Okay, she had at the home when she dies that night. My point was, how would she know where the weapon is at a stranger's home? She's never been to his home before. She didn't know him, from what I understand. It appeared to be a date. She goes to, again, a stranger's home. But I guess they were getting acquainted, right? And I see one drawer open, as I described for you on Tuesday. If she's impulsive, et cetera, I would expect all these drawers around the house to be open trying to find the gun. And they weren't. That's what I was trying to describe to you on Tuesday. So that was my point about the gun. I don't know about her knowledge of guns, et cetera. That came up later, of course, through these notes. I learned that she was an actress and did all these things. I guess she learned how to handle weapons, but didn't own one herself.
You were.
Oh, sorry.
Is that creaky chair bothering anybody else? They need to fix the chair or change it out or something.
Dr. Pena, is one of the sheriff investigation reports that you were given regarding Ms. Clarkson, was it about a friend of hers where she was, a good friend of hers, where she was staying at her house, where she picked up a weapon and started taking the bullets out and doing things of that nature? Person named Patty Walred or some person, if I'm pronouncing it correct.
I never saw that one.
Okay, and did you, when you were talking with this Los Angeles Sheriff's Department investigator, did he ever tell you any story about her being at somebody else's home and picking up a weapon and basically taking the bullets out and things of that nature, unsolicited, in other words, on her own?
No.
Okay, so assume that that's correct. Would that have any bearing on your thinking as to Ms. Clarkson and her familiarity with weapons?
No.
Okay. Now, in giving the opinions that you've given regarding the gun, and you've explained those again today, basically, is it just the particular weapon that's involved in this case, or were you trying to understand whether or not she liked weapons or didn't like weapons? In other words, what was the point of your considering that particular?
I'm just trying to figure out how she knew where the weapon is. I know it's not her gun, so just very simple. She's at a home. How would she know where that gun is in the home? And that's it.
Well, how do you know that she didn't know where it was?
Objection, let's argument.
Well, he's made a statement and he's asking how does he know that? It's basically asking for the basis of his knowledge, so I'll allow it.
Because if she would have been opening up, again, all the drawers in the home, and I asked someone to check that specifically, and they said, no, that's the only drawer that was open to the left where she was found, and that's it.
Okay, in other words, you're suggesting that she would have been the one to have opened the drawer, is that correct?
And find it magically, no, I shouldn't say it that way. Just by luck, happened to find the drawer that had a gun, and then use it or whatever.
In assuming that, you're assuming that the gun was always in the drawer for a period of time, is that correct?
I don't know that.
How do you know it wasn't her gun?
I was told it was not registered to her.
Okay, who were you told it was registered to?
Actually, I don't believe they know who it was registered to, but the owner was the defendant.
Oh, so you were told it was the defendant's gun?
That's correct.
Okay. How do you know that the gun wasn't being put in or had been put in the drawer and that was the reason it was open as opposed to it being there and open to be found? How do you know it was not the reverse?
I don't know that.
Okay. So if she saw somebody put the gun in, that would be different, or if she opened the drawer, she could have found the gun.
That's pretty lucky to find it in that drawer.
Were you ever told that she picked up guns unsolicited at other people's homes that she knew, other friends?
No.
Ever told that she liked guns?
No.
Were you ever told that there was, or do you know whether or not she has ever made statements about her familiarity with weapons, her herself making statements?
Only in one of these where she used them on set when she was doing some scenes, when she had a part, would she manipulate guns or use guns?
Okay, were you ever told that she went to gun ranges?
No.
Now, setting apart whatever she may have done in her acting type roles, do you know whether she had ever fired a gun?
I believe she had.
Okay, and I assume that she didn't fire one of her acting jobs. In other words, did that relate to her acting or not, or do you know?
I don't know.
Okay, so who told you that she had fired a gun?
That's from just reading some of the investigation reports.
Okay, what investigation report told you that? In other words, was it a sheriff's department, a district attorney, or I don't want to have you look at the exact report, but was it a government report by the district attorney or sheriff's department, a defense report, both?
I don't recall. I'd have to go through these thoroughly.
Okay, but you didn't know that back in September of 2003 when you authored your autopsy report. All this is what recently came to your attention, correct?
That's correct, but I did the autopsy February 4th of 2003.
But your report was September of 2003, correct?
Finalized, that's
Yeah,
correct.
your finalized, you didn't know it before your finalized report, is that correct?
That's correct.
You didn't know it in 2003, did you?
No,
You didn't know it in 2004, did you?
no,
You didn't know it in 2005, did you?
no,
2006?
no,
It was 2007 that you got this wealth of information, is that correct?
that's correct.
Basically, Dr. Pena, on the day that you went to this death scene, you talked with various investigators, and they told you about the D'Souza statement that Mr. Spector in his right hand was holding a gun, and Mr. D'Souza said something to the effect that and he made they gave you his statement. Is that true?
Yes,
And you talked about that already. Isn't that correct?
yes,
And did they ever tell you, either on that date or any other date, that Mr. D'Souza was unsure of what Phil Spector said, and he said something to the effect, well, it's my English, you know. Did they ever tell you that?
Objection, Your Honor, that
The
mistake.
objection is sustained.
Did they ever make a statement to you on or about the 3rd of February of 2003 that had the word unsure in it at all?
no,
And when I used the term unsure relating to Mr. D'Souza, they didn't use that term unsure at all. Is that correct?
not once.
Did you, in the statements that were provided to you by law enforcement regarding Mr. D'Souza, did they say anything to you about any statement he made concerning his English?
No,
Is it your assumption well, let me ask you this question. When you were provided with statements of the information that when law enforcement arrived, Mr. Spector summoned or asked the police or welcomed them in the home when they first arrived. Isn't that true?
Sustained.
Did they make a statement or did you get some information that when law enforcement arrived at his home, that he made a motion to come on in to his home when he initially arrived?
I'm going to object to the, I guess, phraseology of the question, a motion to come on in. It's speculative.
If that's the basis of the objection, I'll overrule it. Were you ever given any information that a statement such as that was made?
no,
Okay.
When you were given information basically about Mr. D'Souza's statement, is that correct?
yes,
Okay, and you were actually given some reports regarding that, is that true?
yes.
And who gave you those reports?
Our investigator coroner got those for me from the Alhambra Police Department.
Okay, and these were in writing that you basically still have, is that correct?
Yes.
They're not in the official coroner's file, is that true?
Oh, they are.
Okay, now, those particular reports, do they tell you that the statement that was reported by Mr. D'Souza that you've already gone through was made about 5 minutes after Mr. D'Souza heard a sound that he thought was a gunshot or a pop?
Sustained. And on that note, we will take our recess. Ladies and gentlemen, keep in mind the admonition, 9:30 on Monday morning. Thank you.
I'm off on Mondays, but
Mr. Dixon, the jurors and alternates are gone. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry to be a pest about this. I just wanted to have a sense of where our flying witnesses, at least one, perhaps two, in for Monday. Now it may go over till Tuesday because Mr. Lilyfield is going to testify. I just want to get a sense of when Mr. Cord thinks he might conclude his direct with this witness, because it does help with our scheduling.
Do you have a
We won't
approximation?
waste county money.
Thank you.
My thought would be we could finish probably another half day for sure, but we got to get some rulings on that memoir.
I'm reading it, not as we speak, but I've already begun to read it.
Right, and I will, indicate to the court, we're not intending to get into every detail.
I'll be honest, I believe, and I'm subject to, if I see something I haven't seen, that you're going to be allowed to ask hypotheticals based upon it. That would be,
We want certain information to come in more than just hypotheticals. It's the document itself and what's particularly concerning is
I
that,
see, okay.
that's the only, we don't have a witness to call because it's the words of the decedent that is there. It's on the computer. We're prepared to
Well,
call.
even when you say that, I mean, even if I let you use the entire document, and I may well, it's not so much, look, doctor, these were found on the computer that belonged to the decedent. Read it and tell me if it changes your opinion.
I understand that, but we want the document to go at least in some parts of the jury. Now, there's some portions where we're clearly not going to be objecting to be redacted.
That's for a thing to worry about later.
Right, but the point is that the people are saying that this is not authentic, that this is not
I told you I'm leaning towards letting it in.
Okay.
I haven't read anything at this point that tells me that it so far it seems to be the story of her life, and it appears to have, it's very detailed. I haven't seen anything that would lead me to believe otherwise. Obviously, I don't know if it's entirely accurate or not. Who knows with anyone's, but it appears to be something that you can use for cross-examination.
Okay,
If I find something different, I'll let you know.
Okay, well, that's going to take, and then the emails, we've got all these emails and so forth that, just like the one email where.
Well, generally, I feel about the emails, you've used one. In fact, it basically came in without objection that the emails would certainly fall into the same category.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Then my question is, in light of the tentative ruling by the court, does that change Mr. Ford's estimate? Again, we would just be saving county money by not housing people here overnight.
Well, two things. One is I think a half a day, maybe a little longer is fine, but if they want to bring in
Let
somebody.
me ask you this. How long is Detective Lilienfield supposed to take?
Well, it's more complicated than that. There's people who have other things. I think Mr. Brunon has something going on Monday. If Mr. Ford's going to be with this witness and then redirect and recross, then that gets you to your federal court appearance, and then Mr. Lilienfield has another problem. Anyway, it's complicated. I'm just trying to get a sense.
I understand.
We can call out of order.
We don't want to call out of order.
Whoever they're bringing in.
Mr. Brunon, what's your schedule as of whenever?
So pressed, I'm going to check it. I have a rather complicated motion down in the federal court in St. Anne on Monday afternoon. I have informally discussed with the prosecution perhaps calling Detective Lilienfield on Tuesday. That doesn't work for them. I'm trying with the federal court to get them to agree to put it on the next Monday or the following Monday. But talking to them, you have better luck with God, I think. But so my answer is I don't know. I'm just going to call everybody tomorrow if I can find out.
Okay. I just want to get as much time. Monday's important only because we're not going to be in session on Thursday. So Mr. Dixon can attend the graduation of his daughter, and he's going to do that. I mean, it's that simple. So
Thank you.
yes.
Appreciate it. Well, we'll try to work with.
Okay. All right.
I'll let you.
Thank you.
Not yet. Almost.
Quiet. Can we have quiet, please? We're still going. We're on the record.
So I just want to get Mr. Dixon's attention. Your Honor, I brought something to his attention, and I want to bring it to the court's attention. It was brought to my attention last night that we had turned over two potential defense witnesses, their names, to the prosecution. And we had a little sidebar about this when I was asking Ms. Grosvenor some questions which involved her sister Angela and her sister Kathy.
Okay.
And as I indicated to the court, those questions were all asked in good faith based on reports that I had previously turned over to the prosecution indicating that both Angela and Kathy had provided information in contradistinction to what Ms. Grosvenor's testimony has been.
Okay.
Subsequent to that time, it has been brought to my attention yesterday that apparently Angela Pledgey and her boyfriend was paid a visit. And they were paid a visit recently, I believe it was last week, May 23rd. And this all comes to me by way of our investigator, Your Honor, Ms. Tyndall, Tyndall, who had provided me a report last night, and I've given a copy to Mr. Dixon so he could take a look at it. And it really is quite disturbing. I wasn't there. I'm only relating to the court what I have been told and read in this report. And I know Mr. Dixon will respond when I'm finished here. But if these allegations are correct, they are to say the least, quite disturbing, and to say the most, border on certainly witness intimidation. And when I say this, this is not directed at either Mr. Dixon or Mr. Jackson, but only because they are the keepers of the government's case. It may even border on prosecutorial misconduct, and depending where this goes, could even lead to a request for a mistrial in this case. Apparently, Deputy District Attorney Investigator Freya paid Angela Pileggi a visit. She was at her, and Freya is spelled F-R-E-Y. Maybe I should have
F-R-A-Y-E-H.
F-R-A-Y-E-H, thank you. He paid Angela Pileggi and her boyfriend a visit. I believe it was on May 23rd, so it was just a few days ago. And apparently in the course of the visit, as it is related to Ms. Tyndall, our investigator, they were there with a local North Augusta, Georgia undercover drug agent. And the ruse that was used to engage them in conversation was that apparently they were there to talk to them about drugs. And one of the individuals told, in the team of three, there were two males, Mr. Freya, the North Augusta, Georgia undercover drug agent, and a female. One of the males told the boyfriend that he was there to talk about a missing crack pipe. And the boyfriend indicated, I don't know what you're talking about. And then the conversation moved into, did you know that Angela had a drug charge in South Carolina? And it's escalated pretty quickly, and apparently there were some very nasty comments made. It was the boyfriend as well as Miss Pileggi's desire not to speak with these individuals. And as I understand it, and I'm using this term, and I'm sure we'll get into it a little further to see whether this term is justified or not, but it appears that they took it as threats from Mr. Frey and threats from these other two individuals, that Angela had to come out of the house and talk to them right now. And she did come out to the house, declined to talk to them basically. And basically she said that she wanted to basically go to court and tell the truth, and did not, quote unquote, I don't want an innocent man going to jail, and I want to make sure there is justice. To which Mr. Freya said, following that statement, he stood up and yelled at her, there's a dead woman with her family who wants justice too. And we've all been around long enough to know that there are certain ways to conduct investigations, and there's certain ways that investigations are not conducted. And it's unfortunate, sometimes emotions get involved. I wasn't there. I know Mr. Dixon, Mr. Jackson obviously weren't there. But I think that if this occurred, I'm asking this court to put a stop to it. This is not investigation. This is witness intimidation. And I've certainly been around long enough that I have seen this happen. And I'm not saying this is not in any way impugning Mr. Jackson or Mr. Dixon in any way, but I've seen this happen before. I've seen it happen on the federal side. I've seen it happen on the state side. And it's amazing how witnesses for the defense will just dissolve and melt away when somebody shows up at their door, shoves a badge in their face, and starts getting nasty with them. And Miss Pileggi and the boyfriend ultimately went inside the location and turned them away at that point. But it's not so much what was what the results of the interview were, or what the results of the interview weren't. What's important here is the manner and the way this was conducted. And that's why I said I want to bring this to the court's attention. I'm going to ask for a hearing on this outside the presence. I think that Mr. Freya may or may not have some explaining to do here. Certainly, if these allegations are true, and according to Ms. Tyndall, Ms. Pileggi and her boyfriend are willing to fly out here at their own expense to get on the witness stand and say this is the way it occurred. Now, Mr. Dixon has shared with me, and I know that he wants to speak to the court about it, but if this occurred, there certainly needs to be a stop to it. Folded into that argument is we also received from New York University, Your Honor, and this was also quite disturbing. I'll leave it to the court to decide whether it rises above or below or at the same level of what I've indicated occurred with Angela and her boyfriend. But we understand that somebody on the prosecutorial team, I believe it was Mr. Ocampo, I may be incorrect about that, and actually I don't want to say, I don't know, but at any rate, somebody from the prosecutorial team served a subpoena, not in person, but by fax and regular mail, which under the Interstate Witness Compact Act is not a valid service. We all know what you have to go through, and you do have to jump through a lot of hoops to serve an out-of-state subpoena in a state case. Sure, I'm very sorry, Cindy. Let me back up a second. We all know that to serve a state subpoena out of state, it's not like the feds, it's not a nationwide jurisdictional situation. You have to jump through a number of hoops. You have to make applications here in California, then wherever the foreign jurisdiction is, you have to make applications there and go through judicial approval. The court's familiar with it under the Compact Act. I understand that this was served by fax and regular mail. I have no indication otherwise that the proper procedures were followed. And what was served, Your Honor, was a subpoena to New York University for the transcripts of Dr. Henry Lee. Dr. Lee attended that university over 3 decades ago. He received his Doctor of Philosophy on February 25th, 1974. He graduated from the School of Arts and Sciences on February 25th, 1974, and received his Doctor of Philosophy degree on October 27th, 1975. And the question that pops up on the radar screen for me is, this is, in my opinion, tantamount to harassment. Why do his grades and his transcripts over 35 years ago have any relevancy whatsoever to these proceedings and his testimony? It's just about as remote and stale as it could be. And I think in part what it is in light of where Dr. Lee now sits as a potential witness in this case, and clearly he is, if not the kernel of the most important of the defense witnesses, he's certainly satelliting around the kernel of that. And now they've gone and served subpoenas on transcripts that he received as a student, in 1974, 75, so over 30 years ago, over 3 decades ago. What possible relevancy does this have other than to send, by way of inference and innuendo, a message to Dr. Lee? And it's not a message of, gee, come on back into the courtroom, this is a friendly place for you. So I want to bring this to the court's attention, and I think really, although they are somewhat distinct issues, I think they really fall under the umbrella of the general argument that this is not the way things should be done.
Thank you. Gentlemen.
Well, Your Honor, I'm not sure I can speak to the SDT to New York University. I do understand that was sent before the hearings, or at least before the conclusion of the hearings. But I would like to talk, and if that's okay, perhaps we could defer that. I just don't. I had to I took a test to get a new job recently. I had to give them college transcripts from when I graduated from SC in 1971. So I'm not sure I quite get it. I'd love to.
Okay.
But let me talk about the so-called visit to defense witnesses by DA investigators. Mr. Rosen gave me this report, the defense report, I think at noon, and I asked him if I could have a little time. I've read it. I've contacted Bill Freya. In fact, I've spoken with him, and his characterization of this meeting is much different than is contained in this report. The manner of it, there was a meeting, there was an attempt to interview, but the manner of it was recorded on audio tape. And if there is a problem, we're happy to, I'm going to listen to it. I'm happy to let Mr. Rosen listen to it. And if it continues to be an issue about this, then I'm happy to have the court listen to it. From what I know, and again, I haven't listened to it, I've only talked to the DA investigator, I don't believe that there was anything inappropriate in trying to interview this witness at the time that's described. But at the end of the day, there is an audio tape that I think we should take some time and all listen to. Okay?
I have no problem with that, and I'm willing to listen to it. Of course, we'll see what it says, and I may be putting the cart before the horse, but we also are aware that sometimes the interesting material never makes its way on the tape recording. But I'm not suggesting that here. Let's start. That's a starting point. Let's get it down here tomorrow. Let's listen to it tomorrow and see what fruit it bears within.
You coming in tomorrow?
Oh.
I'll be here.
Actually, no, I have something else to do.
All right.
Something else to do, as the court knows.
Yes. All right. The bottom line is I think it's premature. If a hearing becomes necessary, you let me know. Obviously, the matter with this university and Dr. Lee's transcripts, there's too little information at this point. If there's some more that's gained and you have something more for me, I'll be glad to listen to it.
Well, one of the things also I'm concerned about is,
I'm concerned that we stop anything like this at the moment. I don't want this to continue on tomorrow or over the week.
Well, but you're assuming something's happening. Right now, you don't, all you have is an allegation from a witness that they believe that something inappropriate was done. The district attorney's investigators said, no, it wasn't. We have an audio tape that may or may not shed light on that. And until I listen to the audio tape and find out if there's anything inappropriate or something that even suggests that, it's premature for me to do anything.
Well, may I ask this question? Can I ask through the court of the government what subpoenas have been served on other of the defense experts that have been identified?
I don't know.
Well, we're happy to go upstairs and look at that and communicate with Mr. Rosen as we do with our witnesses.
Why don't you do that, and I'll see you Monday morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good weekend.
Okay, you too. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. That is it for Phil Spector today. In 20 minutes, there's supposed to be a Karen Reed hearing. However, we don't know if there's really supposed to be a Karen Reed hearing or not. We didn't know about it. There's nobody else covering it. Excuse me. Law and Crime has a placeholder for it. There's talk of it being just a Zoom thing. There's talk of it being an in-person motions hearing. So I don't know. But we're going to find out in 20 minutes. So you guys take a break, grab a bite, get you something to drink, all those good things, and I will see you over there. And if it ends up being a nothing burger, then we'll just go ahead and watch the battered and burned trial, because that was getting pretty interesting yesterday. Well, I'm not going anywhere, Nancy. I'm just covering a different thing. So you can still hang out in 20 minutes. So, well, before we go, we have 20 minutes. The thing with this witness, despite all of the mistakes, the medical mistakes, how is he supposed to know? Like, I understand the psychological autopsy thing, but still, how is he supposed to know her state of mind? He never once talked to her when she was alive. Anybody can tell anybody anything, write down anything. You still don't know their state of mind. So I don't know. Go sit in the bathroom for 20 minutes. And the question about, I missed part of it. Not that I worried about it, because I had to go let Belle back in. The open drawer. The open drawer. She just happened to open the one drawer where the gun was. Sure, she did. The man has a history of threatening women with a gun. She's killed with a gun at his house. She did it to herself? Yeah, that's believable. And his main reason, he said it over and over and over and over, for him determining homicide was that she did it at somebody else's house. Because you don't do that at other people's houses. She didn't know the house. First time there, she didn't know where the gun was. All of that makes perfect sense to me. And then this attorney's getting up there and asking the dumbest questions. Oh, so you just assume that she didn't know where the gun was? Of course she didn't know where the gun was. She'd never been there before. She didn't even know if there was a gun in the house. That is what's irritating me about the... How many parts to this testimony? We're on like part 12 of this doctor's testimony. This irritates me worse than the medical mistakes. I mean, the gallbladder does not produce bile. That's your liver. What was the other one? Oh, Vicodin. Hydrocodone, acetaminophen, 10-650. $6.50 is a Tylenol. Because you don't want to take 650 milligrams of hydrocodone. You don't. A doctor should know that the 10 milligrams is the hydrocodone and the 650 is the Tylenol. I mean, you're not giving, if you're a medical examiner, no, you're not giving patients medication. But you still should know dosages because you have to review their medications as part of, you have to know, when you determine cause of death, you have to know what medications they're on, their medical history, stuff like that, right? So you need to know dosages. So, and that's like a basic medication. It's not like some weird, I don't know, some weird disease that you don't see a lot in a lot of people. That's a common medication that a lot of people take. It's not like some obscure medication for some obscure disease that only a small part of the population has, So that bothered me at the time. Now I'm more bothered with the lawyer. It's not the doctor. It's not the voices. It's not it's the questions coming from the lawyer. It's like he needs to be off the sand now. That's why I paused it and I was just like, I need a break. I just need a minute of quiet from both of these guys right now. Because be done. You're beating a dead horse right now because you keep asking him about her mental state. He doesn't know. He cannot tell you whether or not she had the mental state to do this to herself. He doesn't know. And the one thing where she said, I'm going to chuck it, to me, she's talking about her acting career. To me, it sounds like she was going to chuck the acting career. Not, who says chuck it about unaliving themselves? Yeah, fortunately. And I'm assuming doctors I mean, I guess I shouldn't assume. Because nurses have to, so doctors have to too. They have to do continuing education. Even if you're a medical examiner, you're a doctor. So to keep your license, you have to do continuing education. So pretty sure you get refresher courses on things. And I've not nursed since 2010, 2009. So it's been a while. So when he said the gallbladder produced bile, I was like, that's not right. But then I Googled it just to double check because I was like, okay, I don't think that's right, but let me double check first. It's like, no, I'm right. Gallbladder doesn't produce bile. Yeah, that was weird. Yeah, that was weird. This whole thing just keeps getting weirder and weirder. I want to know. I mean, this is a long trial. It's going to be a long time before we get to the end, but I want to know why it ended in a mistrial. I mean, a hung jury. Because to me, I mean, I know you're not supposed to make your decision. And I know in the second trial he was found guilty. And that's not what I'm basing my thought process on now. I'm basing it on the trial. This was his thing he did. He brought women home. They wanted to leave. He pulled out a gun. So, yeah, I think he did it. I don't. Well, of course, we haven't seen the defenses. Well, we've kind of seen where the defense is going, though, with his questions to the doctor. So, but I guess part of a jury bought that she did it to herself, I guess. Yes, this ended in a hung jury. Yeah, the first trial was a hung jury. It was the second trial that convicted him. And they didn't televise this one, just like the Menendez brothers. The first trial was on court TV, ended in a hung jury. Second trial, they did not televise. Same thing with this one. I don't understand what the reasoning is behind not televising the second trial after a hung jury. I don't know if they think the publicity or whatever caused the hung jury, so they're not going to televise the second one. I don't know. I don't know. But that's like, that was his thing. Bring a woman home. They want to leave. Pull out the gun. But he never actually shot it before this one. So, yeah, weird. I wonder if any of the jurors ever did an interview or anything. Because I would love to know what they were thinking, like why it was a hung jury. Because it just seems so obvious. Okay, well, those are just my thoughts. So, I will see you guys on my other stream in 10 minutes now. Bye.